What is up, everybody, and welcome to episode 49 of the Trainer Scoop. Today, I am joined by a competitive bodybuilder, healthcare professional, and all around average, but in my book, exceptional guy, Andy. And then I don't want to mispronounce your name. I should have asked you this before. Is it Hingsberg? Is that how you say it?
Hingsbergen.
Hingsbergen. My bad. Totally butchered that, but we're going to roll with it.
You and the rest of the world butcher it. It's all good. I'm used to
it. So, Andy, I really appreciate you coming on to the podcast, man. It's been one that it's been in the back of my mind for way too long. I should have made it happen earlier, but I'm really excited to delve in and get your perspective on some things.
No, this is cool. Glad to be here.
Yes, sir. All righty. So I always like to go into a little bit of how I know my guests or how I got connected with them originally. And this one goes way, way back. Back to when I was a freshman at Ohio State in 2015. I was a member of the OSU Powerlifting Club, and we had a really cool opportunity where we actually got to go out to the Elite FTS kind of base compound, whatever they call it. And at the time, which we can talk about that a little bit, but you were out there helping out, and you actually worked with me on doing some things that could help a kind of upset / strained glute medius. It was plaguing my squats and everything hurt. And it always stuck out to me. That was like, it got better after a couple of weeks, and maybe it wouldn't have gone so quickly if I didn't have that advice. So appreciate that. And then you fast forward a couple years. I want to say maybe it was like 2018, 2019. I'm at the gym that we currently go to, Springfield Health and Fitness. If you're in the area, highly recommend that you check that gym out. And I saw you, and I was like, man, this guy really looks familiar. So I text one of my buddies, one of our mutual friends, Mitchell, who's actually been on the podcast. Great guy, Mitchell. Mitchell, shout out to you if you're listening to this. And I was like, hey, man, do you know a guy named Andy? I think he used to work for Elite FTS. And I was wondering if this was him at the gym in Springfield. And he was like, yeah, I believe he lives around there. And he's like, that's probably him. And of course, at the time, some things changed over the years, employment wise and relationship wise. I was, of course, decked out in all of the gear, Elite FTS, sweatshirt, gym bag, all that. So I was like, maybe it wouldn't be best if I went up and said hi today, because I didn't know exactly how touchy that subject was. And then we kind of reconnected down the line through that. So it's been cool to kind of see it come full circle, man.
Man, it's crazy. You said 2015. That it's so long ago, but it really doesn't feel like it.
Yeah.
I started my internship at Elite FTS in 2015. And that was just wild. I mean, you go from, okay. Anyone who's ever been to Ohio State knows it's a very fit campus. There's a lot of very fit and health oriented individuals there, but it doesn't hold a candle to what it is like at Elite FTS, where you are surrounded by greatness every second. I mean, these human beings are just ungodly strong and just do wild things, and it's no big deal, just an average day to them. And it's a wild experience to be like thrust into that environment. I mean, it's crazy. It's wild too, how that environment is intoxicating. Mm-hmm. Like, it draws you in. It just makes you want to be awesome and good at everything. It makes you want to be a strong lifter, a strong athlete, a good educator. That was, my internship was very cool. Very, very unique experience. And I got very lucky. So you came in 2015. So I must have been just finishing up my internship, or I wonder if I was employed by them at that point. I can't remember.
I had seen you on content before, as like, we've talked about it in the gym. Andy had a couple very like semi-viral videos where he was playing like a gym bro, videos like that, and other educational videos that I had seen you in, I believe, because I kind of like recognized you when we first got there, because I was always in soon. So I want to say maybe it was farther along in the process.
Yeah, I think I probably was employed at that point because I didn't really have much pull as an intern. It's not like I could do anything. But
Mhm.
yeah, not long after, I do remember inviting out the OSC Powerlifting Club. Um, I did you come out with Danny Masenchik?
Yeah, and they were like, dude, this guy's strong as shit.
Yeah. Danny is incredibly strong. I mean, incredible lifter. That very destined for greatness. I mean, but anyway, yeah, I remember you coming out. I remember bringing the team out. I just thought that was a really cool experience because when I was a student, I want to say my sophomore year, we got invited out for a Q&A with Dave. Um, and that was like a dream come true for me at the time because I was obsessed with Dave Tate and John Meadows. And I'm like, oh my God, I get to go to Elite FTS. It's an invite only gym. I get to ask Dave questions on camera. Like, this is so cool.
That's cool.
And it was neat, but like it only lasted like an hour. And like Dave was tired and didn't really want to do it. So like but it was enough, like it was like that little breadcrumb. I'm like, I gotta come back. I gotta come back to this place. I gotta do more here. Like I want to train here. Yeah. It was nice bringing you guys out. I mean, very like full circle moment in a way. Like it's not like I became anything, but like I felt like for the first time I was kind of popular.
Right. For the first time.
Yeah,
Not the last time, maybe.
I guess.
So I always chop it up at the gym with you, man. We've been talking about training, talking about random stuff, but
Yeah.
definitely interested in hearing your background, like how you kind of first got into lifting, how maybe you said you looked up to like Dave Tate and John Meadows, maybe how they were introduced to you back in the day, and then kind of how that took off from there.
Yeah. So I first started training when I was 14 years old. I joined the lacrosse team at my high school, and I was little, and I got my ass kicked. I mean, they would pick me up and throw me across the field. I was so small. And I thought to myself, I have to make a change. Like I got to get bigger. I have to be faster. I have to be meaner. So my buddy and I started training in his basement. And not long after that, you start training, you start, buying all these supplements and C4 and pre-workout, and you get on YouTube and you watch Ronnie Coleman deadlift 800 pounds. And I found this video of a guy, IFBB pro, Antoine Vaillant, and his videos were just kind of wild. He plays like death metal and does crazy stuff, and he's hanging out with his buddy Juju Mufu. And he posted a video of him training with John Meadows at the S4 compound. And so that's probably the start of when I first found out about Elite FTS, what it really was. And I kind of investigated it further because I thought, what is this gym? Like, what is all this crazy equipment? And how are they able to do this? Like my concept of a gym was either Eric's basement or like the YMCA. And I thought, these guys are screaming and shirtless and throwing chains around like chalk, like it's nothing. Like this is the place to be. So yeah, I started getting more and more involved in lifting and training, and I started watching videos of John Meadows and Dave Tate and reading Elite FTS articles. And I quickly learned that John was still in a pretty competitive bodybuilder, but he wasn't an IFBB pro yet. And he and Dave trained with passion and a plan, and it was very detail oriented. Every step, like every training session they had, was geared towards getting John where he wanted to be, which was an IFBB pro. And that was just really cool to watch, and I became obsessed with that stuff. And so like that first time out at Elite FTS, I felt like I was meeting a hero, at least one of them. So yeah, that's pretty much my background there. It just kind of took off, and I just got really lucky is all. I got really lucky with that internship. I got even luckier when they offered me a job. So yeah, and this it's kind of actually difficult to talk about because of John Meadows passing away, but I looked up to him so much, and he was such like a substantial, just a really good impact on everyone around him. Fun little story about him. This is more heartwarming to me than maybe to anybody else listening to this, but I'm sure they'll appreciate it. So my buddy and I went to the Arnold Classic, the expo. And at the time we were obsessed. We were obsessed with John. We've got our Mountain Dog training sweatshirts on and our t-shirts. We thought, let's try and meet John Meadows at the Arnold. We didn't even know if he'd be there. We just kind of took the gamble. And sure enough, we're walking around and we see him and he's talking to some dude. I have no idea who this dude is. And he's deep in conversation. We kind of like back off and give him some space. And he sees us. And the next thing I know is he turns to the guy he's talking to and he says, hey, it was really nice talking to you. Let's catch up sometime on a phone call. I need to talk to these guys. And I'm like, oh, okay. And sure enough, John's like, he turns to us. He's like, hey guys, I love the shirts. I love the sweatshirts. This is awesome. And he goes, can I get a picture with you? And I'm like,
damn,
that's not how this works. I'm the nobody. You're the body. I'm supposed to ask for a picture with you. So no, he's like, no, I want a picture with you guys. He takes his phone out. He hands it to the guy who's just talking to, and we pose for a photo with him. And it meant a lot to us that like he stopped everything and took his time. Well, fast forward to me being at Elite FTS. I think it was like my third training session out there. So we finish up, with work for the day, and we go out to the S4 compound. That was before Elite FTS moved to its current location. And sure enough, I walk out with my other interns, and John is out there talking to Dave, and they're just shooting the shit about the train. And John looks at me as I walk in the door, and he looks back, and he does a double take, and he goes, I know you. And I'm like, what? He goes, I recognize you. Hold on. And he pulls his phone out and he finds that picture that he took with me and my buddy. And I'm like, holy shit. How do you remember me? Like, first of all, it's the Arnold Classic. There's thousands and thousands of people there. And you remember me enough to find me in your phone. Like it was wild. And it kind of shows what a truly good, real human being John was. I mean, just the nicest guy. Everybody always has really nice things to say about John, and it's because they're absolutely true. Like he really was the real deal.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. That's a cool story.
Yeah,
This is really a full circle story, man. The fact that he remembered that is pretty crazy. That's
like because I was a nobody. It's
yeah,
just it meant a lot.
yeah, definitely. What was your like college degree in? Completely off subject, but
Something completely useless. No, I take that back. So I have a bachelor's in psychology.
Mhm.
And I love psychology. I find it very interesting, but in reality, it was just a means to an end for me. I just needed a degree. And I say it's useless because you really can't do anything with just a bachelor's. You have to take it further. And I had no interest in doing that. So, and that goes back to me saying I was very lucky to get that internship. It was because it was my senior year and I had no clue what I wanted to do, no plan at all, no direction. So getting that internship really like was a step forward for me because I had no idea.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome, man. And I feel like some things are just, meant to be, even though it's not where you are right now, it's still like a huge stepping stone for you, I'm sure. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's, I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. You may not know it at the time, but like everything happens because it is a step forward in some direction. And you might not know where you're going, but you're going somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Definitely. So when you first started training at Elite FTS, were you training for bodybuilding or powerlifting at that time?
Um, both.
Mhm.
So, you're influenced by all these big guys who want to make you as strong as humanly possible. But I was more interested in, the physique sports aspect. So like I dabbled in a little bit of both, and there's some, some power building strategies. You can get big and strong. And probably it was towards the end of my internship, I had mentioned that I wanted to do a bodybuilding show. I wanted to compete in physique, men's physique. And everybody in the office was like, okay, do it. And I'm like, I don't know. pretty small. Like, I don't know if I can really pull this off. And they're like, no, you should do it. You should go and get on stage and give it your all and do it. And I thought, all right. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? I lose. I take last place. So that was really nice, because in that environment, you know, you're encouraged all the time. People are constantly asking me, how's training going? How's dieting going? What are you doing for cardio? How are you feeling? And it was really cool. I definitely went about competing the first time in the absolute wrong way. I crash dieted for like 4 weeks, and I did basically everything you should not do. I lost a ton of muscle, and my placing reflected that, but I learned a lot from it. They always say you should compete just for the learning aspect, and I absolutely agree. It's beneficial even if, you know, you take last place like I did.
Yeah. Yeah. How many shows have you done since that first show?
4? Am I at 4? I
Mhm.
believe so.
Nice.
About right. So obviously my last show was my best. I took 4th place at the Arnold. But I don't like to tell people that, because 4th place was also last place in my division. So I mean, it was, again, a really good learning experience. That was the best show I've ever done, not only in terms of what I brought, you know, the package I brought, but how the show was run, the professionalism. You know, that stage was
Oh yeah.
warm. It was awesome, very well organized. The pump up room was beautiful. It just seemed like everything was coming together, and that's how I feel every time I compete. Like, everything seems to come together tighter and better, and more organized than before. And I just feel like I get better and better. So, you know, the more you compete, the better you get. It's true.
100%. Yeah. And I think, you know, going back to re-emphasize the point that you made, you talked about how everybody at the office was like, just do it, just, you know, go ahead. And
Yeah.
you had that mindset, and it's, you know, it's kind of still applies. Like, you've learned so much from that competition, especially high level at the Arnold, you know, and I think, did the winner get a pro card for that show?
Yes, they did. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're competing amongst, you know, pros and future pros. And that just really ups the ante for you, helps you learn along the way. And it's something that's tough to convince people of. I didn't listen to that same type of advice. It took me like 4 years to compete in a powerlifting meet. But then, like, after that, just stuff starts clicking. You become more confident. You know,
Absolutely.
it's definitely, there's something to be said for just, you know, it might not be perfect. The timing might not be perfect, but, you know, give it your all and go ahead and just jump in the arena is one thing that I've come to realize over the past couple of years myself.
For sure. And powerlifting is very unique, because powerlifting is more, I see it almost as more of a group sport in a way. You know, you're lifting the weights at the end of the day, but you've got a handler, you probably have a coach, you've got your training partners, because you're not handing your bench out to yourself. And usually people travel with you to meets, and you've got like this team of support behind you. And that makes it something really special. Um, Bodybuilding doesn't really feel the same. A lot of bodybuilding is very, my fiance would make me say, selfish. It is selfish. uh every waking minute is, you know, revolves around training and eating and recovering and being ready for the next training session, cardio and everything else. And you find yourself alone a lot, alone with your own thoughts when you're deep in the heat of cardio, and no one's there to cheer you on and tell you to keep going. And obviously, you know, you have a support system, but it's not quite the same as powerlifting. Powerlifting is very unique in that aspect. It makes it really nice. It's a good way to get introduced into strength sports in general, because you kind of get a feel for what kind of weights you can move, what a training program is supposed to feel like. And it's kind of nice. I do miss powerlifting in a way. um,
Yeah.
towards the end of my little powerlifting career, I felt like my body was falling apart, because, you know, I was lifting, I was a 181 lifter, squatting over 500. That being said, I was doing it in gear, and I probably shouldn't have been in gear at the time, but, you know, I was at Elite FTS. It's what you did. You train in gear.
Mhm.
So I don't know, if I could go back and change things powerlifting wise, I probably would have not used gear as early as I did. Because it's a whole other beast. Raw powerlifting and geared powerlifting are very different. And I don't think people pay them the respects that they deserve. You know, people see a bench shirt and they think, you're not pushing that weight. Then the shirt's doing all the work for you, but that's just not the case. It's a whole different beast. I mean, you're essentially lowering a freight train on top of your chest and then exploding it off and trying not to pass out in the meantime.
Oh yeah, whole different set of skills involved.
Have you trained in gear?
Yeah, one time, man, and that was it for me. It was just, it's different, man. Like getting into it is tough.
That's a battle in itself.
Yeah, and then like the way you have to change your movement pattern. Like I did like a single ply suit, and just like squatting in that, it felt so weird. And I think maybe I might have been suited for it. At the time, I was like, wide stance squatting. I was, mobile as shit in my hips. And now I don't think I could do it. So there's that.
Yeah.
But it's a whole different beast, like you were saying, man.
Yeah, you definitely need to like develop that raw strength before you jump in gear, because gear just it amplifies your weaknesses. And if you're weak in any certain area, you can get injured very quickly.
Yeah.
I think it was the last meet I did, my opener squat, something felt wrong. I felt all corkscrewed and twisted as I wedged under the bar, and I immediately unrack it and fell backwards with 500 pounds on my back. And I'm like, God, I don't know if I should really be doing this.
Yeah. That's a wake up call. Dang.
Yeah. It's different versus, raw powerlifting. Not saying raw powerlifting is easier, but the limitations of your body. You don't have to anticipate the limitations of your body in a suit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because the suit dictates your movement pattern and you have to groove just right. And your suit has to be on correctly in order to hit that groove just right. If it doesn't all come together, you're at extreme risk.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's kind of what I found is like, it's just tough to make everything fall into place. Like it's just like weird changing my squat a little bit. And I'm like, this just doesn't feel right. They didn't push it on me. So I was like, all right, I'm done.
It's not for everybody.
Yeah. Transitioning back into bodybuilding, what was some of the feedback that you got from the judges at the Arnold? And then what's your training looking like going forward to kind of improve upon those things?
So the feedback was exactly what I expected. Size. I need more size. Those dudes that showed up, and to be honest, I was a little naive going into the Arnold, thinking that I would do okay because it is an international show. You've got people flying in from across the planet, paying thousands and thousands of dollars in airplane tickets and entry fees and hotel stays. Like, they're bringing it, and you better bring it too. And I brought my best package, but it clearly wasn't good enough. Those guys are just big. They're huge. Men's physique is definitely turning into bodybuilders and board shorts. Yeah. So the only response from me is that I just have to get bigger. That's all. The conditioning I brought was okay. My tan got kind of messed up. That was kind of annoying, but it wasn't it didn't take away from my physique all that much. But the biggest thing was size. Those guys had an easy like 20, 30 pounds on me. So just got to get a little bit bigger.
Yep. Got you. Do you think
that's the focus of my training right now? What?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say that's just the focus of my training right now. I'm just enjoying this improvement season. I'm working with Dylan Bear. He's a registered dietitian. Bear Aesthetics is a huge company, very well organized, lots of really great coaches. And I have had a lot of success with Dylan. He knows my body better than I do at this point. So I just do what I'm told. I eat the food he tells me to eat, and we just continue to grow and get better. So that's what I'm doing now.
Did you know Dylan Bear from the Ohio State days, or how did you become connected with him?
I did know him from Ohio State. To be honest, when we were in school together, I wasn't a big fan of him. Yeah. I think honestly it was just jealousy because the dude was big then too. but I just thought he was kind of a little broy for me. You know what I mean? But he was a nice guy always. You know, I wasn't a huge fan of him at the time, but as he continued to grow his business and get better and better, I was like, whoa, this guy really has a handle on things. He really knows what he's doing. And I thought I would be silly not to reach out to him and ask about coaching and see what he can do for me.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. One question that came up into my mind when you were talking about how some of the men's physique competitors are kind of just like bodybuilders in board shorts. Do you
Yeah.
think or see that there will ever be like a weight cap or like the height weight caps? I guess you could, there's definitely a term for it. I can't think of it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. So they definitely have that with men's physique, or not men's physique, classic physique.
Yeah.
I do believe in the next couple years they'll probably put a weight cap on men's physique as well,
Mm-hmm.
because there are so many crossover athletes, and I personally don't agree with that. I think the classic physique is a much different look than men's physique, and which are both much different looks than bodybuilding is supposed to be. But you've got these athletes competing in all three, and you're like, I don't know if that's entirely fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, I foresee weight caps coming in men's physique, and I look forward to that because it'll help the little guys like me.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. It is pretty crazy. You know, I've been watching some of the shows and kind of like keeping up with the results recently, and man, they are just, those guys are huge, you know.
Yeah. I don't know if I had shown you, there was a guy that competed, I think he was class D, but he competed with me, and he was from Mongolia. I couldn't tell you his name, but he kept all of his clothes on. You know, we get back to the pump up room. People are starting to pump up too early. And I'm thinking to myself, knock yourself out, dudes. You're going to lose that pump pretty quick. So I'm trying to keep my clothes on. I'm trying to keep my cool, you know, wait until the last minute. And that's when you go all out and get a good pump. And I see this guy sit down in the corner and just start munching rice cakes. And I thought, this guy knows what he's doing. He's got all his clothes on. He's got his head down. Sure enough, about 5 minutes before we go on stage, he rips his clothes off. He gets a crazy pump. This dude is larger than life. And I'm thinking, this is an open bodybuilder. He's not supposed to be back here. Does he know this is men's physique? I think he's on a separate day. No, he competed in men's physique, and he was so big, the judges marked him down because his shoulders were just absurd. I mean, I have pictures on my phone I can show you in the gym, but he competed in classic physique the next day and did remarkably better. I mean, the judges placed him much higher because, let's be real, he was more of a bodybuilder and a classic physique competitor than a men's physique competitor.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, it's an interesting division for sure.
Yeah,
And I like keeping up with all of them. So it's been cool to see that
for sure.
evolve, because man, it is a whole different ball game than when it first started a couple years back. But kind of transitioning from competition, I'm definitely interested to hear some of the lessons that you might have learned from those exceptionally strong athletes
Sure.
throughout your time.
Um, so I there are a lot of things I can't tell you about Elite FTS, at least not publicly. Um, but one of a good lesson that I learned from a very special lifter, I'm sure you know him, Joe Sullivan, is one thing about Joe is he's very in tune with his emotions. He has very good emotional regulation. And what I have found is that is incredibly important in powerlifting, in bodybuilding, and life, is to get a really good handle of who you are, what you're capable of, and how you react to things, because that makes a huge difference in your emotional response, your central nervous system response, you know, how you handle heavy weights, how you handle heavy training. He's very good at that. He's very good at emotional regulation and controlling his ego, and it allows him to do superhuman things. That's one of the biggest takeaways from him. Plus, he's just a really genuine individual, and I have always found the more genuine you are, it translates to better outcomes in life and training and everything. You know what I mean? You gotta get a handle on your ego. Ego is not necessarily the enemy, but you need to have a handle on it. And Joe is he's exceptional at doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, man. Especially you see it's been a pretty long productive career for him. And oh, when is it? Is he gonna break, or is he gonna try to break the Tom Platz record like this week
Yes.
or something maybe?
Yeah. Ever since I kind of left Elite FTS, I don't get excited about powerlifting stuff anymore. It's just kind of like not that interesting. But yeah, seeing that video he posted, it's powerlifting, but it's also not. I mean, to break Tom Platz's record, like that's actually really cool. I find that super interesting. I'm really looking forward to that.
And
Because
is it like 525 or 500 for like 24 or 23 reps?
I want to say it's 525. I thought it was 26 reps or something.
Okay, something like that.
It's something around that. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's gonna go
Yeah.
for it. So
I think he can do it.
yeah,
I really do. I see a lot. This goes back to emotional regulation. I see a lot better emotional regulation with him than I think Tom Platz ever had. And that's not to knock Tom Platz in any capacity. I just think, as the years progress and as we advance, we get a better and tighter handle on things.
yeah, yeah, and it just goes to say, like, he's had a pretty. I think for a power lifter, it's safe to say he's had a pretty long career so far. He's got probably a few more years to go as well.
Yeah.
Really heavy weights, maybe some world records. I don't know the exact specifics, but he definitely has had records on records. And you have to have some type of control over your ego, because you could go into the gym and just absolutely smash weights every training session. Like you see, West Side versus the World. It seems like those guys had no governor on the ego. But, when you're applying a little bit more thoughtfulness and just generally being smarter about these things, you can have a really, really long, successful career.
There's something to be said for letting your ego drive you and be a good athlete. A lot of those West Side guys were assholes. Like that's that's the reality of it. And they were the best at what they did. But you don't see a lot of those guys still training. You don't see them still thriving. Usually a lot of them ended up pretty injured, pretty hurt. It's kind of rare to see those guys still killing it on a day-to-day basis. And I don't know if you know this, there's a West Side guy that goes to our gym, and he's one of those guys that had a really good handle on his ego, his emotions, and he's still squatting over 600 pounds.
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about. You have to point him out to me sometime.
Yeah,
over there where he's there. There's a couple of strong dudes at that gym, but
yeah, for sure.
You're talking about, that's awesome, dude. Yeah, so that one definitely goes down. Ego is in checking that. It's an important thing, but it's cool to hear about how you can learn from those people that you kind of see on social media. You might not get a whole picture into their lives, but definitely there's some things to be taken away. There's always good things, bad things to keep in mind too. So
absolutely. There was one other one I wanted to mention. He was actually our CFO my last year at Elite FTS. His name is Steve Deal. I don't know if you remember him or if you've ever heard of him. He's kind of like he considers himself a powerlifting hobbyist. He's not like he doesn't take it too serious. And I think that is actually the secret to his success. He never takes himself too serious, and his priorities are very much family oriented. He's a businessman. He's a family man. He's a father of 2 kids. At the same time, he is incredibly strong. I want to say his last meet, he squatted 880. He benched 840, and I think he deadlifted 600. Yeah, you heard that right. Benched 840. Like, what's even crazier is when I tell you he trains alone in his basement.
Yeah.
In gear.
Some videos.
Yeah. Like he takes shirted benches over 700 pounds alone. He's unracking himself in mono hooks, like granted, but in a shirt and just pressing it like it's nothing. And that's how he's always trained. He's wild, but he's a family man first. And that's one of the things that really stuck out to me is um, he doesn't put too much into being the greatest powerlifter ever. He puts more into being the best father ever. And I think that's really important, at least with my moral compass and the things that I now value now that I've left Elite FTS.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a good lesson. And it kind of just goes to show, like, people like you and I and a lot of the people that are listening to this podcast, super, super passionate about strength sports, lifting, competing. And it's probably taken over our lives at one point or another. But, you got to kind of check like what's important in the long run. And it's different for everybody, but it's something to definitely consider.
It's very important to maintain that balance, because without it, I think it's way too easy to get derailed into getting one, injured or broke, spending all your money competing in a sport where there is no money. You know what I mean?
100%. I feel like to kind of move on from that, it's worth saying to everybody that's listening, because it's so easy, when you're younger, both you and I probably did this, where you latch on to like a personality or kind of like an authority figure through social media, through YouTube. And it's kind of like when you meet them, you experience being around them, not to slander anybody or talk any type of shit, but you realize just like, it's like, what's the saying? It's like, don't meet your heroes or something, because it's not always great to become really dogmatic about like one person or one approach to training or one ideology, because when you really meet the people, you get around them for an extended period of time, you eventually move on, you realize like,
the truth.
Oh man, it's not exactly what I was hyping it up to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely experienced that at Elite FTS, and I'm not going to name any names because I think most people know who I'm talking about. He is a good athlete, a good mentor. Not exactly the easiest person to work for, and I grew up, is what it came down to. I grew up and I learned what I wanted and what I didn't want. And so I moved on.
Definitely. Something you got to do in life. But
absolutely. Yeah.
I feel like now maybe even more so than back then, it's even easier to kind of like, I'm trying to think if I were like 15 or 16 now, with how pervasive influencers are, kind of how all encompassing that can be. And it's easy to get tripped up in that, but it's just something to watch out for my younger.
You mentioned influencers. I do have a funny story. So I helped the sales director set up the gym. I can't think of the name off the top of my head. It was the zoo. The zoo?
Oh,
Zoo
yeah,
culture. Yes. It was Bradley Martin's gym in California.
Yeah.
So he and I went out, and that was my first time ever being out to California. It kind of blew my mind. And we met Bradley, cool guy. But he definitely he is like the social media dude. Like he's that influencer, and he can't like escape that. Like that's who he is all the time. And it's kind of just wild. Anyway, I'll make this story short. We're out there for a few days, and we're trying to like unload these trucks full of heavy equipment, and it's a lot of work. And we've got all the equipment set up, but we had to get the plates unboxed. Each individual's 45 is in a box, and he's got like a bajillion of them ordered, like Alico and Olympic plates and all these crazy weights. So he comes through that night, and he's like, Bradley Martin voice, "Hey guys, what's up? Is there anything I can do to help out?" And we thought, actually, yeah, we really need some help just unboxing these plates. And he goes, "I'm on it." We're like, okay. he whips out his phone. He gets on, I think it was Instagram or whatever, and he posts a story. He goes, "Hey guys, Bradley Martin here. We're down here at Zoo Culture. We're setting up the gym. We need some help moving some equipment and unboxing some things." And he goes, "If you come down, in the next hour, I'll take you out to In-N-Out Burger right after if you can help out or whatever." Literally, I shit you not, within like 5 minutes, like 30 kids show up, all wearing his gear, and they're like, "All right, let's get to work. What should I do?" And we're like, "What? Like, this fame is real. This is crazy."
Dang.
It was awesome though. We got those plates unboxed, we loaded them on the equipment, and off he went with his crew of kids, and they all went out to get burgers. That was a funny moment. It just kind of blew my mind. I'm like, wow, people take this social media influencer stuff pretty seriously.
Damn. That's a wild story. And that's funny because when I watch his videos, I always wondered if that like I think it's called like an A-frame rack, the big rig with all the different stations to do squat, bench, all
Yeah,
that. I was like, that kind of looks like an Elite FTS setup.
sure is.
And then one of my buddies and clients that lives in LA, he'll go from time to time, and he's like, "Dude, this equipment's kind of getting beat up." So I guess that time frame checks out where it's been like
Been a
6,
couple of years.
5, 6 years. It's probably been used so much to the point where like upholstery's getting
Oh yeah.
about time to get changed and all that stuff. That's
I
funny.
think at the time when they were just getting set up, is they actually had a limit on how many people would be allowed to train there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like kind of crazy to think about. You don't think about like a gym limiting the amount of people that can, make use of its services, but they had to consider that
Yeah.
they had so much business.
Yeah, man. And a guest pass is like $60. It's wild. I definitely want to hear a little bit about what made you transition from the role that you had with Elite FTS into the current role that you have in healthcare, man. So what were some of the thoughts going into it? How's it going in general? And
Yeah. So when I left Elite FTS, I walked out those doors, I went home, I went to bed, and then immediately got on a plane and we went on a cruise. And for the next like week and a half, my now fiance and I kind of just reevaluated our lives. So, I had quit that job. She was working at EF Hutton, which was an investment company at the time that went under. And we both had no idea what we wanted to do. And so I pretty much just went back to basics. I said, what are my morals? What are my values? What do I want? Like, what do I want in life? What do I want to accomplish? What do I want to be remembered for? Which was something big. It was important at the time. And I had no idea, honestly. Well, Hannah got a job at a local surgical center in registration. And one day she says, "Hey, there's this thing called X-ray tech where you take X-rays. You're not a doctor, but you're also not a nurse. And you get paid pretty well." And I thought, okay, that's kind of cool. I'm a bodybuilder. I know anatomy. I could do something like that. So I investigated it and saw that school was only 2 years. And I thought, all right, this is attainable. It's, growing up thinking about like hospital work, you're always told doctor, nurse. Sorry, my dog's barking. And there was no way I was going to do a bunch of school to be a doctor. And I didn't want to wipe ass. I'm sorry, but I did not want to be a nurse. And I know there's tons of different nursing specialties.
there he is.
Yeah.
Not even a week in the new home.
He's doing good. Just a little bit bitey.
Yeah. Very cute. What kind of dog is he?
He is an American Eskimo. 99% American Eskimo, 1% rat. And I learned that the other night because we had to give him a bath.
I saw your story, man. That was funny. But he is a cute guy. Oh my goodness. The audience is gonna love this.
Quality content.
Oh yeah.
So where was I at? We were talking about me getting into healthcare.
Yep.
So
not really a nurse, but
yeah. X-ray tech, cool job, gets paid pretty decently. And the biggest thing for me was like, I knew anatomy. I knew a lot about the human body. And I thought that could be very applicable. So I gave it a try. We jumped into school, graduated, and I learned I loved it. And now what I do is I'm a CT technologist, computed tomography CAT scan technologist. And I find that is a really good fit for me. I like action. I like excitement. I like being in high speed environments. I handle a lot of strokes, a lot of traumas. People come directly off the ambulance onto my table when they're having a stroke. And I do really well in high speed environments like that. And the cool thing about it is I am my own boss. Obviously, I have a manager, we have supervisors, but they don't tell me what to do. I go and I get my patients when I feel like, I get the patients that I want to do. I scan at my own speed. I don't have to like answer to anyone as to, why I haven't done something, besides doctors who are constantly asking, when's this patient going to go? They're going next. That's the biggest lie I tell. Anyway, it's I love what I do. I feel that I can incorporate the things that I love, anatomy, bodybuilding, health, into my everyday life. And it's a really good fit for me.
Very good. Very good. That's good to hear, man. And also, I mean, one thing that kind of comes to mind is like, what were you, like 25, 26 when you decided to go for it, or how old were you?
Yeah. Yep. That sounds about right.
So was there any pressure from like your family? Was there any kind of like nervousness for you?
Oh, absolutely. Because, you're expected to choose what you want to do at 18 when you go into college. Like you have any sort of clue what you really want to do. Like you don't know. And if you do, I think you're lying to yourself. I think most people don't figure it out until they're at least in their early 20s,
Mm-hmm.
23, 24. And so I felt, yeah, I did feel a lot of pressure. I felt like a failure, to be honest, but you just keep going. You just got to pick something and keep moving forward. And it'll all work out. And I think you're never too late to change careers or change what you're doing. Like you're never too late to reevaluate what you want to do.
Yeah, definitely. Good advice to hear too. How does, or how is your like bodybuilding competitive training goals influenced by work? Is it like the stress from work can kind of bleed over? I mean, you said your schedule is kind of, it's not too terrible in terms of like getting some good training in, but how do you find like those two interact?
You just have to prioritize your time. But and maybe this makes me less of an athlete, but I prioritize my patients.
Yeah.
I I take bodybuilding very seriously, but I also take my career very seriously. I take the lives that I impact day to day very seriously. I take a backpack to work. My backpack has my Theragun in it for when I have some downtime for some recovery. It's got some supplements in it, Morpho Calm and a couple other things, multivitamins and stuff like that. Any sort of like Tylenol meds if I'm super sore and stuff like that. But on my backpack, there's a little patch and it says, "No one is coming. It's up to us." And every time I put that backpack on, it reminds me that my patients come to me for help. And if I'm not there for them, they could be negatively impacted for the rest of their lives. Like if I don't perform at 100% for them, that could have lasting impacts. My patients could die if I don't operate at 100%. And so I prioritize that, and bodybuilding comes second. And I try to make them equal, but at the end of the day, I think it's better to prioritize the health and well-being of others over yourself. But that being said, I also take my own health very seriously because I have to perform at 100%. I have to be there. Like if I'm tired, if I'm not focusing, that could impact somebody. So it's a really healthy balance of a little bit of both. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. It's good. Good to hear that balance has been a reoccurring thing. So I like that. That's always good to hear.
That's one thing that I was told at Elite FTS is that you can't have balance if you want to be great. And I fully disagree. You have to have balance if you want to have a great life. You know, there's a difference between having a great life and being a great lifter. I could give a rat's ass about what I lift anymore or how I place in a show, but we're only here once. You know what I mean? Like, don't squander it chasing something stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like, not to say like you're not going to be the best that you can be and try to advance the ranks in like men's physique competition. But just at the end of the day, you really have to consider like what's going to be more impactful and beneficial for your life.
You know, I'm not going to be Mr. Olympia, and I don't care to be. Someone else can go live that life and do those things.
Right.
I want to be as good of a competitor as I am meant to be, but I also want to have a good time doing it too.
Yeah. 100%. Nice, man. Well, covered a lot, covered just about everything that I had in my mind. I always like to kind of close it out by checking on like what's next for you. You know, maybe if you have any future competitions or if you're just trying to build, what's next career wise, all that stuff.
For sure. So what's next right now is, you know, I'm just trying to put on as much size as possible. I have my heart set on competing in the next Arnold, but depending on what kind of changes we can elicit, I may consider something sooner. I'm not, you know, set in stone. I'm doing a lot of work, just trying to expand in every avenue, trying to learn as much as I can. Quick little shameless plug. One of the things that goes along with being a healthcare worker is I've learned a lot about health and nutrition and supplementation more than I thought I would. I've seen the long-term impacts that the little changes, the little things we do day to day have on our lives and our futures. And in turn, that has warped, I don't know if warped is the right word. It's changed the way I approach my own health and nutrition. And I am very grateful to be an ambassador for Leviathan Nutrition. I don't know if you're familiar with them. The owner's Will Whitlock, super great guy. But I've been able to work pretty closely with him and kind of come up with some ideas. I'm not actually allowed to talk about it super detailed, but one of the issues that I've kind of seen, especially in the bodybuilding realm, is this concern with blood clots. You know, COVID and the COVID vaccine and hematocrit, you know, being elevated from utilizing certain substances. A lot of people are really concerned with that. And what I have learned from my studies and everything else is that you know, one of the things that IFBB pros like to do is they donate blood as a method to lowering hematocrit, and that is not a safe long-term solution. It actually only really is effective for about 48 hours, and then your body, you know, produces red blood cells again, and your hematocrit's back through the roof. Will and I have kind of come up with a new supplement. It'll probably hit the market in about a month and a half, I believe, that actively lowers hematocrit, improves blood flow. And I saw a need for it, you know, amongst the bodybuilding community. Of course, a couple people have been dying recently from blood clotting issues and other scary issues like that. And I don't know, I'm really excited for it. I'm really excited to see what kind of avenues we explore down the road, coming up with real supplements that cause a real impact and real change. Yeah, it's just kind of cool. Just something we're working on.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. I remember you were telling me about one other Leviathan supplement that you use. What was that one?
I use like all of them.
Yeah, man, I feel like we talked at the gym once, and there was one that you found especially helpful during prep, I want to say. But there's probably
GI support, probably.
Yeah.
It just helps better, you know, it helps your system utilize food appropriately. You know, they say you are what you eat, but that's not really true. You are what you digest. And if you're eating all this food and you're not processing any of it, then what's the point? You're not getting the benefit. But GI support has been a huge help in keeping my body regular, in processing food appropriately. There are some times, when I work nights occasionally, and it's very difficult to eat, from 7 p to 7 a, and then wake up the next morning and have to have check-ins with my coach and not be a bloated, watery mess. But GI support has been a huge help with that, processing food, getting it moving, getting it to the muscles, and helping, I'm not so bloated in the morning when I'm using that. So I try to use it as much as I can. That's probably the one I was talking to you about.
Yeah. Yeah. So is that like a link on your Instagram page or?
Yeah, it is. Yep. There's a link on my Instagram. If you use the code Andy10, you get 10% off everything on the site. So highly recommend checking that out. Leviathan Nutrition, it just top tier supplements. They've got lab results posted as well. That's huge. It's hard to find a company that posts lab results for their product to prove what's really in it. That's something Will is very passionate about as well. So
yeah, guys, I'll have to include the link to Andy's profile in any show notes. Or what's your Instagram handle if anyone just wants to type it in real quick?
It's Gandhi Fu. It's an old high school nickname. I've just never got around to changing it. GANDHIFOO. Gotcha. I don't know, just kind of stupid. I'll probably change it now that you mentioned it, but yeah, that's my handle.
That's funny. Yeah, no, I know a couple of people that have like pretty big fitness accounts now, and their stuff is like old nicknames that just like kind of, I don't even know if yours died, but like theirs died and it's still there.
Yeah, every once in a while I'll go back home. So I live in Springfield. I'm actually from about an hour away in Springboro, and I'll go back home and I'll see my friends will be like, Gandhi, and I'll be like, don't call me that. Those days are over.
That's funny. Yeah, so guys, go ahead and check out Andy's page on Instagram, give him a follow, and if you're in the market or if you just want to check out Leviathan supplements, go ahead, check it out. I'd appreciate that. Always like to close out with any pieces of advice that you might have, whether it's training specific or just general great sources to learn from. So you have anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, never be afraid to take a radical change for your life. Never be afraid to pursue something that you think is too big. It's just one step at a time, and wherever you're going, you're meant to go.
I like it. That's a good end to the podcast, man. Appreciate you for coming on, dude. Yeah, like I said,
thank you so much for having me. This is fun.
Definitely. Appreciate everybody for checking out episode 49. Once again, follow Andy, and I'll do my little closing thing to plug all the social medias. Really appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead, subscribe, like the video, share it around, ask any questions down in the comments below, and we'll be checking them, and I'll be relaying them to Andy religiously. So any questions that come to mind, always feel free to reach out. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, a review really helps grow the podcast. Sharing it around with your friends is always welcome too. But until next time, guys, I appreciate you all, and we'll see you.